Hi, welcome to Daddy Curb's Garden. We're going to clean up this hot, dry garden bed and get it ready for the fall. And we're also going to build a trellis for our cucumbers and melons. First thing we're going to do is get rid of these tired old tomato plants out of this bed. And we're going to rake the surface. We're not going to dig down, but we're going to rake the surface to get rocks and large things that have accumulated in the bed, to get those out before we add our amendments to the top. Rocks end up into the garden beds because of the compost. There's a lot of rocks that end up in the compost and then it ends up in the garden bed, so I just pick them out by hand and throw them out into the pathways. All of this mulch and loose stuff that ended up on top, I'm just going to take it out and put it in the pathway. One thing about gardening in July and August in Texas is you have to want to do it, because it is hot. And if you don't want to be outside when it's this hot, it feels 10 times hotter. Good thing for this garden, I actually like being out here, so we're going to get this done. The soil in this garden bed over the years has been amended, so it's not bad soil, but it's very dry and very hard right now. So we're going to do what we can to get it nice and loose and full of life and nutrients before we plant in it again for the fall. So the next thing I'm going to do after cleaning the top off is get it nice and wet. If we were to put our amendments on top of the soil while it's dry and then mulch over it, it would be very difficult for the water to get in there and get it nice and wet. So while it's exposed, we get it wet, it'll be a lot easier to maintain that moisture once we cover it up. Now, you've seen me mulch and compost things before, but I don't think I've done any bed exactly as I'm getting ready to do this one. In these 3 black bags right here is grass clippings. 2 of them are very stinky. And I wouldn't doubt by the smell of it that we find some black soldier fly larvae living in it. Let's see what this looks like when we spread this goopy mess out. These black bags of leaves were given to me by a coworker who collects his lawn clippings and bags them up. And these have been aging in the bag for, I don't know, about a month maybe, a little less. It's already composting. It's very hot. This one doesn't smell as bad as that one, I don't think. This one smells. Woo-wee. I don't see any black soldier flies yet, but it smells. We're going to try to give a nice even layer of this stinky stuff. It's kind of clumpy. Woo, man, that smells good. Now this bag is a little less aged. Should spread out a little easier. It's starting to compost, but it's only a week or so old compared to the other ones for several weeks. Now you might ask, why bother? Why would you go through all the trouble of collecting your grass clippings, transporting them to the garden, spreading them out? And by the way, you don't have to wait several weeks like I did. That was just a timing issue for me. My friend gave me the clippings and I brought them home, and I just didn't have time to work that into my schedule, so they sat there and started to decompose in the bags. That wasn't intentional, but it's okay. So back to why would you bother? These grass clippings are full of life. All the bacteria that's living in here, the the blades of grass themselves are full of nitrogen and minerals and things that are good for the soil, full of moisture. So when these break down under the leaves that I'm getting ready to put on, they will add moisture and life, bacteria, hopefully some fungus starts growing in there. This way you start building soil life. You could just go down to the big box store and buy bags of soil. That's fine, it's okay. If that's what you got, that's what you use. But you have to introduce some live compost or something at some point to start building that soil life instead of just using dead soil. When you plant in your garden, what you want is that the soil is alive and it's feeding that life back to the plant. You can't just expect that dead soil is going to grow a super healthy plant. So this is why I go through the trouble in my garden to experiment with different ways to amend the soil with natural free resources like the grass and the leaves. Speaking of leaves, let's go ahead and get a layer of leaves put on this. Actually, before I go get the leaves, I'd like to add some more water to build up the moisture underneath the mulch layer. That's a lot of leaves. Now that that's spread out fairly even, I'm going to water it in again. If I hadn't already put some moisture into the soil and into that grass layer, a lot of this water that I'm putting on top will just go down and run off the sides. So I'm trying to get the leaves real wet, but I'm not expecting this moisture to get through and penetrate too deep. I'm depending on that water I put on first to help condition and moisten that soil underneath. Right now I'm just trying to get those moist leaves on top turned over a little bit so I can expose some of the dry leaves and even out this mulch layer a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. Everything's down in there. Nice, fairly compact, even layer. Not negatively compacted, but in there nice and tight. I will keep watering this every day until I plant in it, which will be about a month from now. I'll start planting in this bed. That'll give that grass and that those leaves and all that moisture time to turn that into composted soil. This should be a very rich soil bed for me to plant in for the fall. Now here comes the fun part. Two things that we wanted to grow this year and we just missed it in the first season was cucumbers and cantaloupe. Now those really shouldn't be grown side by side, but we can grow them in the same garden at the same time. Since we didn't get it done, I thought for the fall we should try to do something a little more fun with it. Both of those plants like to grow up on something, and I don't have a lot of very good trellises. So I got a piece of cattle panel, and we're gonna make a really interesting, easy trellis for the cantaloupe and cucumbers. All right, let's get that in here. Okay, we have a problem. Cover your ears. I really thought the wire itself was going to hold itself up, but you saw when I put it in there it was kind of floppy. So I put these two T-posts in. Let's see if that'll hold it. Beautiful. Better than I expected. The T-post is actually a really good idea because it has these little knobs on it that's supposed to hold wire fencing. So this is, it's actually catching this trellis, keeping it upright. So this right here is a beautiful walk-through trellis. I can plant cucumbers on one side to grow up and melons on the other side to grow up. and we'll have them meet in the middle and we can harvest from the inside. At least that's the dream. Hopefully it works out. We're going to take a short break to go get some cold iced tea because I am steaming. You can enjoy views of the gardens and the animals while I'm gone. These panels, they're called cattle panels. They're 50 inches wide, 16 feet long. Normally they're around $20 a piece if you can find a big box store that carries them. If not, look for your local farm and garden type place that has ranch type materials because they are cattle panels. They're made to put out and build fences for cattle. So they're a really nice, inexpensive, strong structure that you can put in your garden for a trellis for, like I said, for all those climbing plants. All these plants right here that I just put back inside this trellis, these are the blackberry plants and the grape plants that I hope to get planted next spring, if not this fall. And then a couple of the tomato plants that I started earlier by the cuttings. I have 3 here and 2 up on the porch, so I have 5 cuttings. Just a little update on the tomato cuttings that have survived, and hopefully those will be planted in my fall garden. So I'm actually pretty excited about this trellis. With that T-post on there, the size and shape of the trellis should be really nice to plant those climbing plants, beans, cucumbers, melons, whatever else. Sometimes maybe even a indeterminate tomato that will grow up over it. But that's vertical growing space in the garden that I didn't have before. I actually bought 2 panels, so I'm going to put another one down on the other end of the garden. Not in this video, but you'll see it next time you see my garden. It'll be set up. So thank you so much for joining me here in the Daddy Curbs garden. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and click that button. YouTube will send you an email every time I update my content. That way you won't miss anything that happens here on the farm. I'd like to give a special thank you to those who follow and support me on Patreon. If you're interested in that, go ahead and click over and see what it's all about. I truly appreciate you sharing this time with me here in the Daddy Curbs garden. If you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That lets YouTube know that I have something good going on here. If you have any questions or suggestions, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. I love the engagement. I love sharing in the conversation. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon. Several of you have asked for a chicken and duck update. Stay tuned, stay with me, subscribe if you haven't done it yet, because the duck update is coming soon.